On behalf of the Board of Directors, Executive Leadership Team, staff, providers, and family at the Early Learning Coalition of Miami-Dade and Monroe, we welcome you to the ELC CAFÉ. It's more than just lunch. Lunch today was generously sponsored by Becker School Supply. I'd like to recognize Mr. Becker. And catered by Blessed Hands, located in Miami Gardens. How was it? Great. First, we have a few housekeeping notes. Please silence your phone. We are live streaming to our service centers and recording today's event for our YouTube channel. We want you to extend our reach and encourage you to share this event on your social media platforms using the hashtag ELCCafe and hashtag Black History. Before you will find two of our events, and one is a super special initiative. We'll be celebrating Children's Week, so we want you to definitely take the flyer with you and share it. And in addition to that, we want you to encourage your friends, neighbors, everyone to unplug and connect with your children. Talk, read, and sing with your children. This is an initiative started at the ELC with the intention of growing connections between parents and their children. We welcome contrasting points of view and ask that you keep your comments brief to allow others to contribute. Today, we gather to discuss the crisis in Black education. Parents we serve are afraid to let their young children play outside in neighborhoods where many of us played hopscotch, tag, and kickball until the street lights came on. Today, we hear about children murdered on these same streets, schools locked down to secure weapons brought on campus, and increased rates of child obesity due to lack of physical activity, poor food options, and untreated mental illness in our communities. And that's just this week's headlines. Where do we begin in addressing these issues? And how do we advocate on behalf of all the Black girl magic and Black boy joy we know exist 365 days a year? No longer shall they be hidden figures under the moonlight, pushing down systemic fences that separate our children from their boundless promise. I am Lydia Clark, Managing Director of the Professional Development Institute, and I welcome you. To tackle these issues and others on how education intersects faith, family, and focus, we have a well-appointed panel. Their bios are before you. Please hold your applause until I have introduced them all. Dr. Steve Gallen III, School Board Representative, District 1. Dr. Gallen is a lifelong veteran educator, graduate of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. All you Rattlers out there, stand up. President and Chief Executive Officer of TriStar Leadership, Inc., an educational management and consulting firm, a native son, and an advocate for Miami-Dade County's children. We welcome you. Marshall Davis, Managing Director, African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, a graduate of Miami Northwestern Senior High School, a pivotal institution in our community. But for the past 30 years, Mr. Davis has served as the Managing Director at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, serving in this capacity, many of whom may have seen Moonlight, which scenes were held at this facility. Many of his students have gone on to serve on many stages, movies around the world. Juilliard, New World School of the Arts, you name it, Mr. Davis has contributed to it. We welcome you. Tiambe B.C. Kendrick Dunn. Ms. Dunn is employed with the School Board of Miami-Dade County and serves as a school psychologist, where she's practiced since 2005. She's an adjunct professor at Barry University in the School of Psychology. Ms. Kendrick Dunn is currently the president of the Dade Association of School Psychologists and serves on the board of directors for the Children's Trust of Miami-Dade County. We welcome you. I love reading. Love, love, love reading. Ryan Hall, program manager for student engagement and outreach, is an advocate for STEM education. Ryan Hall is the program manager for Code Fever, the White House's award-winning STEM program. He helps to accelerate the growth of entrepreneurial ecosystems across Miami-Dade County. He's an advocate for Black Tech Week, which is a conference held recently here in Miami-Dade, an awesome opportunity to see technology and students and adults alike intersect in our communities. The interactive talks and courses are featured at the Perez Art Museum, Miami-Dade College, and Broward County Libraries. We welcome you. Mr. Jerry Calvert, Senior Program Manager for Florida Reading Corps. Mr. Calvert serves as the Senior Program Manager for Florida Reading Corps. As the Senior Program Manager of a first-year born, he is responsible for supporting 30 AmeriCorps members who serves over 400 pre-K students annually in 8 sites across Miami-Dade County. Jerry brings program management, knowledge, and experience to this position. He previously served as Senior Program Manager at City Year, Miami. He's responsible for an array of different community activities and has served for 5 years, serving 1,000 students in his tenure. We welcome you. Mr. Fahim Ali, founder of Complete Athletes. Fahim Ali founded Complete Athletes in 2010 with a vision of making an impact in his community by developing student athletes into well-rounded individuals, both on and off the field. As the executive director of Florida for Future Stars Games, Fahim hosts annual sports events, parent education workshops, and career development seminars to encourage students to excel academically and competitively. We welcome you. Also with us today, we have 2 of our board members, Mr. Rick Beasley and also Mr. Jim Hodge. Let's give them all a round of applause. And Gilda, where I didn't see her. Welcome. Our moderator today is Ms. Pamela Hollingsworth, Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Partners. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. They have me wired, Fred. I'm going to ask for a little assistance. There you go. Is that better? Thank you. And welcome, everybody. I see a lot of friends here today. This time last year, there's no mistake in the theme for today's CAFÉ, the Crisis in Black Education. It is the national theme. And we work diligently as we plan our monthly events to align with national conversations. And so I would be remiss if I did not mention that this time last year, we were honoring hallowed grounds that African Americans had tread nationally. And our speaker from last year, who is the architect in residence, and I'm embarrassing him now, I can tell, from the city of Opa-locka, Jermaine Barnes is in the house, and we're very happy to have you here today. I also do want to mention that we do have several great items to raffle off today in celebration of today's event, and so there has been a business card exchange. If you have not had a chance to be part of that, please take out your business card, and some of our team members will be circulating through the room during the first half of the CAFÉ, and before we go to Q&A, we'll go forward with the raffles. The panelists speak for themselves. It's a blockbuster group that we've pulled together for your listening pleasure today. And so we'll launch right into question 1. I will say that we find that with a very large listening audience and with an esteemed and knowledgeable panel, we do occasionally have time constraints, and so there may be times when we invite our panelists or our audience to move it along or wrap it up. Do indulge us as we work to stay on schedule today. In identifying this year's National Black History Month theme, the crisis in Black education, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History states, African American history is rich in centuries-old efforts of resistance to this crisis. The slaves' surreptitious endeavors to learn, the rise of Black colleges and universities after the Civil War, unrelenting battles in the courts, the Black History Movement, the freedom schools of the 60s, and local community-based academic and mentorship programs that inspired a love of learning and a thirst for achievement. Addressing the crisis in Black education should be considered one of the most important goals in America, past, present, and future. But just to be provocative, our opening question for discussion with our panel is, do you agree with the theme? Is there indeed a crisis in Black education? And if so, what is your personal response to this crisis? And we'll open the floor with Dr. Gallen.
Yes. My disposition relative to a crisis is really reflected in the notion that this is not a new phenomenon. When you look at this whole pattern of a crisis in Black education, I always go back to the origins of the word. Crisis is based on the Greek origin, talking about a turning point or a testing time. Historically, as a people, we've always been tested in terms of education. When we're talking about the time of Jim Crow and segregation, to the challenges that we faced in 1983. So this is not a new phenomenon. But I will say at this particular point, it's becoming more of a national discourse. Our challenge at this particular time is not to engage in a discussion about what we know is the case, but to spend a little more time talking about solutions in terms of how to address it. We have all of the statistics, we have all of the expertise, we have all of the experiences. But with respect to the issues that we face today, I think we need to draw upon what we have done historically in terms of overcoming that. And that is to embrace the institutions that historically have brought us through as a people. And those institutions are the home, the school, the church, and the community. This notion of a crisis, unfortunately, has been scapegoated to be exclusively an educational problem. Although education, from a public standpoint, has its role, the education of youngsters in the Black community is predicated on the community putting their shoulder to the wheel of this work. So I do believe that it's a crisis, but having been in education in the urban core for over 25 years, shootings in the Black community, that's not new. Underperformance in the Black community, that's not new. Divisiveness in the Black community, that's not new. Racism in America, that is definitely not new. And racism manifesting itself in the terms of providing for equity and equality in education, that is not new. That is ingrained in our history. But what is new is basically, to some extent, a degree of paralysis about what we're going to do about it.
Thank you. And if we could move to Mr. Davis.
I concur with Dr. Gallen that this is not new and that we have to find viable solutions. We have to use every means necessary at our disposal to make life better for our children and for ourselves. We at the Cultural Arts Center utilize the arts to help introduce children to various academic forms of learning. So the arts is a practical way for children to learn, and we use arts in theater to teach them how to read, conceptualize, those kind of things. We use music to teach them math. So we have to find solutions, and as a part of the community, we use our community support efforts to bring children to a deeper understanding of themselves, to know who they are, where they came from, and what the possibilities are.
Thank you. Thank you. And the question is on the floor. Panelists?
Hello. I wasn't introduced, but I do have a PhD in myself. So I am Jessica Sinkfield. I'm an assistant state attorney with the Miami State Attorney's Office, a community relations board member and professor. And one thing that I have to concur in totality with Dr. Gallen is the scapegoat theory. Oftentimes, the criminal justice arena shares in that. And we have to remind ourselves and the community that by virtue of the nature of our jobs, when someone, or particularly a child, comes in contact with the criminal justice system, a system of failures has already occurred. We are, in essence, a symptom and a reaction of what has already occurred. The issues that we're dealing with cannot be policed away. They certainly can't be prosecuted away. But I think, as Dr. Gallen said so eloquently, that we're very familiar with the issues. At this point in time, let's redirect the narrative into what are we doing now? Now that we're privy with the information, now that we're well aware of it, as he stated, the statistics are all here. Everything's on the table. What do we do now? Where does the responsibility lie? And those who are responsible, what are you doing? I think that's really key.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Fahim Ali with Complete Athletes, and listening to Dr. Gallen and Ms. Marshall and this young lady here from Ferguson, Missouri, next to me. I'm marketing director at Hanan's Academic Development Center, which is a private school inside Opelika. And sometimes we have programs at the school, and I reached out to a couple of educators at the elementary schools in the area, and you ask, what's the problem with our African Americans, in our elementary schools? And she said, you know what, Ali? She said, we do our best. She said, they come to school on Monday, and we have to program them, or just to get them back on track, just because everything over the weekend. She said, by Tuesday, they're getting into our regular zone to where they left that over on Friday. She said, Wednesday, they're on track. They're doing their work, they're listening well. When Friday comes and they go back home, they're deprogrammed. What they learned throughout the week is gone. So when Monday rolls back around, it's the same routine. So you try to figure out where the problem is at. In the city of Opelika, and I'm just going on where we're at, it's at home. And I say it's at home because in the education facility, that's the most consistent thing they have. Just think about it. You see the same teacher every day. They do the work over and over. Even me just starting a PE program at our school, everything is over and over. It builds confidence, builds consistency. But when they go back home, it breaks everything back down. So how do we get everything together? We start building the parents up as well. I think that's where it needs to start at. I think there's a gap in between it to where how they're going to teach their kids, sons and daughters, if they don't know. So I'm not sure if that answered it, but I believe that's where our problem is at, and I think that's where we need to go ahead and start building back up at.
If I can respond to some of those thoughts. A lot of times we have parents that are not involved in their children's lives as much as they should be. I'm here because of a guy by the name of Terrell A. McCraney, his life is based on this book, Moonlight. Terrell's mother was a recovering addict, but we could not stop and say because he had these problems at home that we cannot work with him and develop him in the way that he should be developed. So whatever role we have, educator, social worker, whatever opportunity we have to work with children, we have to take them as we find them and take them where they need to be.
Yes, I also echo that sentiment, and that's why I mentioned that the 4 areas that are critical and that have been historically critical, and I would suffice to say in most communities, but specifically in the Black community, has been the home, the church, the school, and the community. Where there are gaps in either, the other makes provisions to close those gaps. But when you actually look at the initial notion around the education of children, even coming from the Latin meaning of the word, it means to raise up, rearing up. the primary educator of any child is the parent. And to the extent that there is a gap in the home, historically, the community stepped in, whether it was Uncle Billy down the street, Mr. Joseph who lived around the corner, Miss Sally who lived next door. The community stood in the gap. Whether or not this notion of church vans, that was a reality. Church vans were for a reason, and it wasn't to transport seniors. Church vans brought children to church, and church had things for children to do. You had community opportunities, so it was an amalgamation of all of these entities coming together, and where there's a deficit in one, the gap is closed by the other. So you're absolutely right. I've dealt with children and youngsters who had tremendous deficiencies in their lives. I being one at some point in my life. There was a gap when my parents divorced in the 7th grade, and my mom left. And my dad traveled. But I had educators who stood in the gap. I had community people who stood in the gap, and they provided not only the optics, but the level of support that is needed. So I agree it's everyone, but when you talk about specifically the Black community, because of segregation and because of the history of us having to have a sense of self-reliance in our own contained communities, there was a sense of interdependency. So we had the lawn man, we had the attorney, we had the teacher, we had the doctor. So our young people had those role models, and everybody put their shoulder to the wheel to raise our children.
We've spoken often about the village that it takes to raise a child, and I think uniquely in the African American community, there were many around us that kind of joined hands to hold us up. I think our panelists and many of us in this room today are a product of that village that has been so carefully raised, emanating from the community. Tiambe, I know you wanted to share, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
My name is Tiambe Kendrick Dunn, and I am a practicing school psychologist privately with the School Board of Dade County, and I do work for a university. I just wanted to mention that everything that all of the panelists mentioned, I concur, especially with Dr. Gallen. I also think from historical context that we have to understand the root of any issue that's going on. It's very important. And for many of our children and for many of our people, very negative things have happened to us throughout the generations. And addressing these issues don't happen overnight. And I personally think, as far as mental health is concerned, it's not being addressed. I think as Black people, regardless of the ethnic background, because all Black people that especially live in this community, I'm African American, but my husband is Jamaican. So, the histories are still traumatic, whether it was in Haiti or whether it was Jamaica or whether it was for Cuba, if you're Black, or the United States, and understanding how that impacts children and families today, because trust me, it still impacts us today in many ways. And until we can begin to understand the root issue, then coming up with the solutions, and I think throughout the years we've seen many solutions that may have been authored by state governments, federal governments, organizations, and we continue to see many of the same issues generation to generation through generation. And so that should be teaching us something, that we have a people that have not, and this is just my professional and personal opinion as well, have not been able to heal. It's kind of like in the indigenous communities. I talk to a lot of my colleagues that are in the Native American communities, and they feel very similar to the issues that are grappling their people, which it goes back to historical issues. So in order for us to come up with solutions, we have to have a real conversation of understanding how did we get there in the first place, and understanding historically what has happened back then, how is it affecting us today? Because anyone that believes that it's not, it's just not realistic.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm surrounded by a lot of very smart people here at the Coalition, and many of them are younger than me, and I can wager that none of them knew who Barbara Jordan was when I dug this quote up. The late Barbara Jordan, lawyer, educator, politician, and civil rights activist, and a personal hero of mine when I was growing up, so famously stated, "Do not call for black power or green power, call for brain power." We very intentionally pulled together diversity here on the panel today, strong leadership in the community, all ages, working in many fields, all collectively in support of children and specifically children of color. So let's take it home a little bit. And I'm going to put this question out to the panelists, and maybe we can start with Ryan. How was your personal experience as a student, thinking of yourself and, you know, in relationship to whether or not there is a crisis in Black education? How was your personal experience as a student at any level, whether it's preschool to your higher education experience, informed your personal work?
Hi, I'm Ryan Hall. I'm the program manager for Code Fever. To Pamela's question about my personal experiences as a student, I attended the University of Miami, and I also went to high school at Pembroke Pines Charter High School. So I had a very, I guess, blessed situation with my entire experience with school. But personally, one thing that really affected me throughout my school journey was my life at home. When my parents divorced back when I was in middle school, that had a very profound effect on me, and it affected my performance in school. I didn't necessarily care that much about paying attention in class when I was worrying about where my dad was when my dad left. That made me feel disconnected from everything that was going on when my teachers were lecturing or when I was taking tests. And the only thing that got me back onto the road of caring about my education were my mentors and teachers who actually took the time to spend time with me and ask me about what was going on. So those people who were actually engaged and cared about me as a person were the people who actually got me back to caring about my personal education. And that's why I feel very blessed and lucky to actually have the ability to go into underprivileged communities and serve as a mentor to students in the same way that those teachers had an effect on my life.
Thank you.
Hello, Jerry Calvert. I am the senior program manager for Florida Reading Corps. It's a really great question because I'm actually from Indiana. So I'm from Indiana, born and raised. Went to probably, my high school actually closed down because when I was there, it was consistently like a failing school. Graduated, was an athlete, got a full ride scholarship to go to Ball State University to play football, and I failed out. Was not ready to go to college. Didn't have the class, didn't have the study skills, were just basically pushed through. And I remember a summer, I was working in a warehouse, and I said, I will never do this. So I went and enrolled into a local university in the United States and had a 4.0. Was not planned. I was like, this is what I want to do.
Second time's a charm.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Was able to walk onto their football team, got their full ride scholarship out of that. But I will say, education for me it was troubling. I had parents who forced me to read. We couldn't do anything before we read every day. So I had that parent, but it was not the school and the environment I was in did not promote. We didn't have a lot of other resources. We didn't have the books. We didn't have the computers. We were lucky to have quality teachers. I remember I had classes where the whole year I had substitutes. So when I moved down here, to work in Miami. I moved down here to work in the inner city, and I see the same thing. And they're starting at middle school, and I was lucky to work at Charles Drew Middle School, Liberty City. That was the first experience I had in Miami, and I fell in love with Miami after that. It's because it is a community sense there. It's a family sense there. They accept you into the culture, and I really like that. But it's disheartening to see that same thing that I know that it took a really strong parent. My mom and dad was foster parents for all their lives. Every kid they had in their house, they instilled that you can do it. This proud sense of like education, and see some of our students. I try to do that in my job now, trying to like always promote to say like, hey, Your circumstances is that's what it is. What you gonna do? Like, it's about being solution oriented, like what I'm hearing the panelists say. But I will say, education for me was so important that now I'm trying to go to grad school. I'm in grad school. I'm trying to get my PhD because I see the power and I see what the opportunities it opens up for me. And to basically say my friends I grew up with, played football with, decided didn't feel like college was it. Some of them didn't even graduate from high school, and trying to still now. I'm about to turn 30. Jesus.
You're a baby.
Yeah. Tell them like go back to school, keep going because like I said, people who look like me, males in education is very valuable. I really believe so, and I take my job very seriously when I talk to students because. Long hair, all of that, they look up to me. They really gravitate towards me. And the students I worked with when in seventh grade are now current seniors at Northwestern. I'm definitely going to their graduation because to me that means so much to me. It's just because they really bought into it. And that's, I think for me, education was a struggle, but it's always what you do. It's not how you start.
I'm going to jump in for just a moment, and then I'm going to come back to Jerry. We have broad ranges of ages on the panel today and in the room. Raise your hand if, as you were growing to school, and Jermaine, this came up when we were talking and pre-planning yesterday, if you saw yourself in the faces of your teachers at all. So some did, and some did not. Jermaine shared so eloquently when he was with us last year, not seeing people in the world of architecture that looked like him as he was moving up. Jerry, you've shared some of your work in encouraging African-American males to enter the teaching profession. Will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's what we should do. Being quite honest with you, I run a Florida reading course, AmeriCorps program, nonprofit that basically we are interventionists. We are student aid. We're in school full time. And I have right now 30 members, and I really recruit highly black males. I'm biased. I'll be honest with you. I will tell them straight up. I am biased towards that. Just because I have seen, and honestly, what it did for me, I had exercise science degree. I was personal training. I was in Miami, personal training, feeling good. Did a city year, and it really did change my whole life. It made me think about like what I'm doing. Like I feel like my impact with students was way greater than running on South Beach and trying entertain. But I think for me, and I have this year we recruited 30% of our core members are black males. Majority of them are going to become teachers, and that's the goal. I'm trying to get more black males into the education system because my experience, our students needs people to look like them. They need people who are black males, who are athletes, who play sports, who are played do array of things, so they can look up to them, and that's what it is. It's just to be able to look up and say, my coach really wants me to be our architect. My coach really wants me to be a doctor. My mentor really wants me to be that, and that's always something that I never had. Like no one in my school looked like me. No one. It didn't happen. So it's for me, I just have a little girl. She's 7 months, and to see that she's going to be, I'm going to push her through education. That's going to happen, and I take all the students I was able to reach as like my personal children, and I'm going to make sure that happens. So my goal is to recruit black males in every sort, minority males of any sort, just male in general. If you know anybody, please contact me. I can leave my car here because my goal is to have a core of 100 members and half of them male, really giving back. And you should see it. We have a former offensive lineman who played in college working with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So that's my goal. So.
Thank you. And the question is on the floor if any of our panelists would like to respond.
Yes. That question was one that pushed me into a posture of deep reflection. I have a different take relative to the exclusive need for black children to be educated by black educators, and I'm not suggesting that what was said. I think there has to be a balance. I don't care if you're black, white, green, or Hispanic. You have to care about children, and you have to be dedicated to that. Before I critically get into my educational experience, there were two people who were significant in my educational journey, and both were white males. Mr. Walpole, if you're listening, I hadn't seen him in about 15 years until the Teacher of the Year ceremony the other night. Mr. Walpole was a new teacher at Miami Northwestern Senior High School my 9th grade year, freshman year. He had the most difficult group of students, predominantly males. We were in a regular English class at the time. He thought that he would give us the red badge of courage to teach because that was on the list of required reading. I rejected that very quickly because at a very young age, I understood that there was no relevance to the war depicted in the red badge of courage when I saw war going on around in my community. So Mr. Walpole was saying, okay, smart Alec, I'll give you something that is relevant. And he placed a book called Man, Child, and the Promised Land into my hand. And that book changed my life, and so did Mr. Walpole. By mid-year, he decided that I was far superior intellectually than my peers. He advocated for me to get in honors. He advocated for me to get an advanced placement. So he was a white male in a black community with black children that, you know, mentored me and really thought about the possibilities of my life. And I always reference him when I look at my educational journey. I went to FAMU. I graduated from Northwestern. And the first time that I found myself into a classroom with non-blacks for my entire life was at FIU earning my master's degree. At Northwestern, all of the students were black. At FAMU, all of the students were black. And now I was at FIU and I was the minority student. The person who influenced my life there was a white man named Dr. Peter Sistone. He helped me to earn my master's and my doctoral degree. So I have a different twist on that in terms of the balance. And the balance means that I would have to have had a Dr. Charles Hartfield, who was a black male mathematician, who taught me the value of being an intellectual from a teaching standpoint, who taught me that teachers should come to work every day with a shirt and tie on, who taught me that, you know, academically you earn a terminal degree, who taught me to become a man of Kappa Alpha Psi. Okay, so these were the role models that I had. But growing up in my home, my parents' formal education, my father passed away with an 8th grade education, but he was brilliant intellectually. My mom earned her high school diploma through a GED program at Dorsey at the age of 45. But my parents valued education early on and gave us the best opportunity to have a solid foundation. Turner's kindergarten, a private school at the onset, and an opportunity to go to public school as we matriculated. I made it, my brothers didn't. So I think my educational journey took a different pathway, but I think the foundation of having us to value education is critically important. And I suffice to say, as I close my comments, it's not simply about the formal educational process. Yes, I learned to read, I learned to write, I majored in English, I published, I've done all of those great things. But one lesson that I learned didn't come from a teacher. It came from the late Deacon James Mobley, who was the deacon next door, who was a porter at Barnett Bank. And a porter is another word for a custodian. But he had a lawn service. And every morning on Saturday, he would invite, once you came of age, the young boys in the neighborhood to get in the back of his truck, to find a space amongst the lawnmowers, and to go and mow lawns for about $20 from 7 in the morning to about 5 in the afternoon. So what I learned from from Deacon James Mobley was a very important lesson, and that's the value of hard work. So it's not just about the education that we get in schools and classrooms, it's about the life lessons, and it goes back to everybody in the village having to play a role in that educational process.
Thank you, Dr. Gallen, and thank you for reminding us, yes, about the importance of diversity inside that village. In recent years, school curricula in the United States has shifted heavily toward common core subjects of reading and math. But what about the arts? Although some may regard arts education as a luxury, simple creative activities are some of the most important building blocks of child development. And additionally, the National Endowment of the Arts recently reported that teenagers and young adults, especially those living in poverty, who have a history of in-depth art involvement, show better academic outcomes than those who do not. And also, that 8th grade and high school students who have a high level of arts engagement are more likely to aspire to college than students with less arts engagement. What is the state of arts education in Miami, and how critical is the arts to the optimal development of the African American child? And we'll start with you, Mr. Davis.
It's also vital to education. And there's no better way to be educated than using arts in this practical way to develop the skills that you have. Again, music is math. Drama is another word for English. There's so many ways that arts help you. You know, all of us made an artistic decision today on what type of clothes we're going to put on, what our signs are going to look like. So it's very valuable. When you learn the arts, you learn simply putting your academic skills in a practical way. And we use the arts for our students, and that's why they excel, and that's why they have been at Juilliard, New World School of the Arts. That's why they're making movies on Broadway and those kind of things. It helps them also to build up their confidence and their self-perception. If you're not engaged in the arts, you're not a fully developed person. If you develop only in the science, then the STEM program is vital, but need to add STEAM to that because you're only educating one side of the brain. When you're into the arts, you're educating both sides of the brain, and you're becoming a whole person rather than half a person.
And how are we doing inside the school system, in the various systems that are set up to educate children and young adults in Miami today? Are the arts thriving?
Yes. In the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and quite frankly across the state of Florida, we have inequities with respect to the opportunity that blacks, Hispanics that are in urban schools have to access the arts. This is part and parcel to the overemphasis on accountability, whereas students who are underperforming are required to take additional academic courses. So on a schedule of 6, if you come in and you have high school, middle school, English, math, science, and social studies, you have potentially 2 more courses to take. If you come in under a certain level of proficiency, then you have to take an extra math and an extra reading. So in these schools, you have a significant abatement of courses that are elective courses, not simply just the arts, but the vocational programs and technical programs as well. So you have a double whammy. Children are already underperforming, and I understand that we have to remediate them academically, but we sadly do it at the expense of those things that they may be interested in. So when you look at a schedule in a school or a curriculum, it's predicated on 3 things. What's required for promotion or graduation, what a student needs based on his or her academic deficiencies, and lastly, but very importantly, what are they interested in? Our children who are underperforming in the urban core rarely get to number 3 because they have to first deal with what's required to graduate and be promoted. Their academic deficiencies compel them, pursuant to state statute, to take certain courses based on what they need academically. So they never get the opportunity, or they don't have the maximum opportunity to get into exploring those things that they're interested in, be it the arts, be it vocational programs, be it the medical programs, those programs that are outside of the regular curriculum. So that is a crisis, but it is ultimately a manifestation of the underperformance that they experience when they get there. And I'll say parenthetically, having been a principal at the elementary school for 3 years, at Holmes Elementary School in Northwestern for 7 years, it doesn't start at the high school. So that progression of underperformance starts early on, and I go back to the contention that parents are the primary educators. And if I don't lose this thought, parents want what's best for their children. Don't ever get that confused. Black parents want what's best for their children. It is up to us who know better and who have the skill set to help them learn how to advocate and become demand parents and navigate the bureaucracy to get what's best for their children. And in many times, we have to help them better themselves. So it's not an either or, it has to be a both and.
Thank you.
I attended kindergarten through 5th grade in the Boston Public School District. When I was a child, I find myself and feel that I was very blessed. But not only was I able to take piano lessons in school, I also played the trumpet. I was in a band, marched in bands and parades throughout Boston through the whole time that I was in elementary school. I 150% agree that the arts for Black children are extremely important. I do think there's a cultural component to it as well. And I have to say, although I work in a public school system, I also work privately. So I do have parents that are my clients that many of their children are either homeschooled or private school. And I actually see like this little shift of many of my Black parents are starting to, pull their kids out of private and public and they're homeschooling for various reasons. But I believe strongly in preventative mental health care. A lot of times in my field in psychology, we're reactive. We go when something happens to a person or when they're in crises. My private practice, I definitely focus more on the preventative health care, mental health care. So many of my private clients, they're not in crises, and most of them, all of them, I guess I would say they're Black, but my thing is they're healthy right now, and my goal is to keep them that way. And so in addition to counseling that I may do with the parents and the child, I often recommend the arts to these children, whether it would be taking acting classes or music classes or dance classes, whatever the child is interested in. And I find a lot of times the arts is also very therapeutic for these children, and it also teaches them lots of discipline. And I have to say on the public side, last week, for example, at my school in Miami Gardens, we did 2 student support team meetings, and 2 Black males were meeting because they're not doing well in reading or something. But I try my best to actually touch the child and see them, because I don't like to talk about children with 50 million pieces of paper around, because I do. But at the end of the meeting, I have the child come in. They can be 5, 6, or 7, because I give children the respect to give their opinion. And both of these boys, one boy said, I said, if you could do anything outside of school, what would you do? He said, I would like to dance. And the other boy, I think he said he wanted to learn to play the piano. So as a school psychologist, where people have this notion all we do is test children and put them in special education, which is not the case, I am in the process of working with the school and some other people in the community of finding out where these children can access those type of things, because I know if this child, that one can dance and the other one can learn to play the piano, then it's going to benefit both of those children education, and they're going to perform much better in school.
Thank you very much. And just to further our conversation about the importance and the beauty of art and its great intersection with culture and development, I would be remiss if I did not invite you to look around and see the beautiful portraits that are hung here today. And the photographer is none other than our videographer, Corey Jackson. And you'll see them throughout the room. We're also very excited to be celebrating the art of head wrapping today, a long tradition among women in the African American community. And Adoch is here today. And I would invite you, even as we're having our conversation, if you'd like to wander over to the table and have your head wrapped. We are going to be raffling off one of these beautiful pieces of fabric that can be so artfully woven. Lots of meaning, and I'm sure that our guest can fill you in as you're chatting with her sometime during today. A Stanford University research study identifies the multiple benefits that sports produces for youth, regardless of gender and race. The study also identified that sports can play a special role for minority youth in comparison to their white counterparts, specifically that minority athletes may have an easier time participating in school networks with stronger focus on intercultural relationships, which is always beneficial to all, and have healthier lives than those minority youth who may not be participating in sports programs. How critical is sports to optimal development and improved outcomes for African American children and youth? And is access a challenge for some African American children? And Mr. Ali, may we start with you?
First of all, I would like to say that sports is very critical for our youth. And I say that because starting the PE program this year at Hanan's Academic Development Center, you can see through sports which kid has the development problems. You can see through sports which kids have problems in math, which kids has problems speaking, and it's critical not only that, but because of your health. Without sports, you have 5th and 6th graders right now that are obese to the point to where they have to go see a doctor as for a diet. And me growing up, we always was active. We were very active. Some elementary programs has taken out the physical education classes, and that's I believe it starts there. I believe those programs that we need to have. Sports took me a long way. I graduated from Louisiana Tech University, played some professional football, but not only that, it taught me how to have people skills. It taught me to be confident in myself. I'm a competitor. Every day I compete with the students that are at our school. Taught me how to be a good dad. And I believe right now, and it shows statistically, when student athletes go into major universities, 79% of them are on athletic scholarships. So and think about it, 79% of them. And you, as a regular student, let's say you wanted to go to the University of Alabama, you can have a 3.8 GPA. Let's say you can have a 4.0 GPA, and they will not accept you. But you can have a 2.3 GPA and be a decent football player, and you get a full ride that may cost you $130,000, $160,000, which majority of our households don't have. So very critical. I believe that there's a blueprint. And I'm saying it's critical because my son just signed a scholarship at the University of Kentucky on February 1st. And we went through the process from him being at elementary school, middle school, and high school. I've moved him around a couple of times. Started off at Norland, went to the private school sector, because I believe that you have to surround yourself around like-minded people. You have to surround yourself around guys that are doing the same thing as you. And I had to do what's best for my son. And the sports realm of it, because academically, he wasn't the smartest one in the group, but he wasn't a dummy either. And let me not say dummy. He was challenged when it came down to education and the routine of it. So in middle school, we went from Crestview, we wanted to go on the Silver Trail because we lived out west. And during football season, his grades were great. Why were they great? We got up, ate breakfast, went to school. After school, we had an hour and a half, did homework. After homework, went to football practice. Dad was at football practice with him. After that, came home, went to dinner. Same thing happened the next day. Football season is over. We get up, breakfast, go to school. Comes home. He has about 5 hours of free time. So, and in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not coming home right away. I'm thinking he has time. He's going to get his homework done. He's going to study his work. He's going to get good grades. What I'm not realizing that the routine wasn't there that we had before. So his grades went down. And I was still trying to figure it out. I maybe hung out a little more because I wasn't his coach during that time. So he had more free time. Daddy wasn't on me like he was on me during football season. When I realized that, his grades went up. I tried to make sure I kept him in things outside of that, other sports. And even with adults right now, when adults have more time on their hand, they tend not to get work done. But I'm being honest. When adults have more time on their hand, they tend not to get work done. I'm talking to myself as well. So, and when we have a routine, when we have a schedule, when we're writing everything down, we get a lot accomplished. So through sports, and I'll go to the second question, the access to it. There's so much right now for student athletes to be successful. We start off with complete athletes. We try to give the kids the opportunity to be the best that they can be. You have, and we didn't have it when I was growing up. You have training facilities. You have media training classes, SAT prep classes, because those are things that you need to obtain an NC2A scholarship. Before, it was sports forced on you. We didn't have the access to the different trainers and everything like that. Statistics shows right now that if you get your ACT or SAT by your junior year and you're an average player, you still have maybe like 83% of obtaining a athletic scholarship. So is athletics important right now with our students in our community? Yes, it's very important. And even if a lot of kids, you have some kids are better than other kids. Genetically is there, but it hinders them because of attitude, effort, character. And I always have the statement that say, I'll take a student athlete that worked harder and is not that athletically inclined than a talented student athlete with a bad attitude or that gives me no effort. Because whether you like it or not, during that work period, this student athlete may not be as good as this person, but that guy's working. He's listening to the coach. He's learning every day. While this kid over here is coming down because his attitude, I know it, I'm getting there. And the coaches at the time praised them, but that student athlete that's still working wind up passing that person. And you try to figure out, we have friends that say, how did that guy get to the NFL? He continued to work. He listened to coach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ali.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Sinkfield.
So I'm gonna just give a perspective. I'm an outsider's perspective. So born and raised in Ferguson, and I've been a prosecutor here for 5 years. And don't everybody hate me, but I feel like there's such a missed opportunity with sports here, and let me tell you why. As community prosecutor, I go into schools all the time, and my initial approach was, everybody can't go to the NFL, everybody can't go to the NBA. I quickly learned in Miami-Dade County, not so, okay? I mean, the first time, I watched a Super Bowl or watched, a couple of football games with friends down here, they're quickly pointing out their friends that are on the screen playing, okay? I mean, making phone calls. Man, that play was awesome. So when you go into a Miami-Dade County public school and try to preach the proverbial, backup plan, you are often, and I'll just speak from my perspective, I am often met with resistance. And why I say we have such a missed opportunity is because we are blessed to have such athletic prowess and success here. I feel like there's so much more we can be doing with it. He mentioned all that surrounds athletics. I mean, from media training to, all the social skills. I feel like because we have such a connection to these, success stories, I feel like we could tap into that a little bit more. I know that there are rules with, professional teams and, but when you have these alum from the Northwesterns, from the Norlands, I feel like there's a little bit more that can be done.
Bring it back home, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I concur the value of sports for our young people is critical, but I also think that we need to have, again, the balance. And what I always say to people, we have to manage expectations. I played football for Northwestern, believe it or not. I had an opportunity to play football in college, but I postponed it. It was too far away, a small school, and I wasn't going. I was going to FAMU. My son played football for Northwestern on the national championship team with all of those five-star players. He had a full scholarship. I've had an Olympic winner under my tutelage, NBA players under my tutelage, NFL players under my tutelage. The list goes on and on. But I also say that other individuals who participated in athletics, football team would be Commissioner Keon Hardeman. He was a student of mine, played football and baseball. He's a commissioner and an attorney. Barry Jenkins, the award-winning director, was a member of the football team and the track team. So the skill set that one learns as being a part of a team is critical. But when I say manage the expectations, we understood that it was an opportunity, but it was not expected to be the finality of one's destination. It was part of the journey. The second thing that I'll say, I remember when I was superintendent in New Jersey, and I spoke to the College of Education at Rutgers University. And you know, I speak truth to power. Very often, you know, they expect the black educator to be the expert on black males and educating black males. So, you know, they ask the black questions. and the question really spoke to the reality based on data as it relates to the statistics surrounding black males and their underperformance and their probability for ending up in prison, poverty, or an early death. And what is the silver bullet? And I gave the example of which many of you are going to probably have an aha moment. Yes, I believe in class size. I was a part of the time when Kendrick Meek got the amendment done in class size amendment. There's a certain number of students we can have. But how does an untrained, not formally educated, no background in pedagogy, curriculum, differentiated instruction, response to intervention, we can go on and on and on. How do those individuals take upwards of 75, 100 young men from different communities, different backgrounds, single-parent homes, living in poverty, special needs, failing in school, and from July to December, their grades are good, their attendance is good, they show up on time every day, they work collectively as a team. As a team. And these are some of the same young men that when they move away from that, as opposed to scoring points for each other, they're shooting bullets at each other. That's the reality in the urban core. So sports has its space, and I said to the university audience, maybe we should do a case study on the youth football coach and find out what is the silver bullet that they have. And I think it goes back to Bill Daggett's principles of education, that it has to be rigorous, it has to be relevant, and you have to have a relationship. So if you haven't played sports, sports can be rigorous. The relevance is there because they want to participate, but more importantly, those who are supervising them, those young men have a relationship with them. So I think it's critically important, and we can learn from that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gallen. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the digital divide and about social media and technology. The Pew Research Center has reported in January of 2017 that by 2015, 2/3 of Americans owned a smartphone. 50% of Americans owned a tablet, and that social media use has climbed to about 3/4 of online adults. What form does the current digital divide take in the African American community, if it does indeed still exist? What does it look like? And let's talk a little bit about how important coding is to the education of Black children and to the broader Black community. And I'm looking at you, Mr. Hall.
Perfect question for me. All right. I sit in a very specific position, which is really great when it comes to technology, since I work with a lot of kids and teens, and I work with them with technology. And I was not too long ago a student at school. So I know a lot of their anger and their issues when a teacher says, "Hey, everybody, put away your phones." It hurts. It hurts a lot because the digital divide is happening in the space that actually has the biggest area of opportunity, which is in the actual classroom and in the school. One of the things I learned back when I was at the University of Miami and in an economics class, I learned that economies are based on what is the resource that is most scarce. So back in feudal times, in the feudal era, the economy was based on agriculture because the thing that was scarce was food. Once technology changed that economy, food became abundant, and now we moved into the industrial era, and in that era, the economy was based on labor because there was a very small amount of people who had the ability to actually work all of this mechanical manufacturing equipment. We had a really big thing happen about 20 years ago that completely changed the economy, and we're not talking about it. We had a complete change with information. The internet, phones, and all that stuff completely changed everything. And people consider that we are inside of an information age. We are not in an information-based economy, though, because the scarcity is not information. There's enough information for people to actually listen and watch video for several lifetimes. What we are in right now is an attention economy, because what is scarce is the attention of everybody in this room and everybody in every other room all over this place. Because right now we are live streaming, so there are people that we are trying to get their attention. We are vying for that attention. And everybody, no matter what industry you're in, you are competing for the attention of the people that you're trying to serve. And as an instructor and as a teacher, I am competing inside of that attention economy for the attention of these students. So one of the important things is I have to spend time, and all of us have to spend time, taking all of this technology and figuring out how do we actually spend the time to integrate it into our curriculums and what we're doing personally. One of the things that I found is that we have a lot of students, even though they're spending a lot of time on their phones and on their iPads, they don't necessarily know how to touch type. How many people in here know how to touch type? Like, you could type without looking down at the keyboard. All right, how many people in here, do chopsticks? All right. What I've noticed is that you're not alone. There are students, yesterday I had a class where I had students between the ages of about 8 to 13. These kids on the phones all day, all this time, but when I put them in front of a computer, I watched them, and they went on this website called NitroType, and they were all competing against each other to see who could type the fastest. And they're typing away super fast. And I'm like, all right, you're getting around 16 words per minute, 24 words per minute. All right, I'm going to show you guys something cool. You want to see how fast I could go? And they're like, yeah, let's see it. I get in front of the keyboard, 70 words per minute. They're like, oh my gosh. And then I say, hey, you want to learn how to type like that? And everyone in the room, yeah, show me. So I was able to get all of them to go on typing.com, and now they start learning how to touch type. This one is for the J, this one is for the F. And they all were engaged, and they enjoyed it because I was able to take something that was exciting to them, which was games and competing with each other. They loved that portion, but I was able to connect it with the opportunity and the ability that they could all actually have if they spent the time doing this. So now they're all taking the time to learn how to touch type, and they're like not even in middle school yet. And these kids are going to be absolutely amazing because I took these resources that were there and I connected them with them. And everyone in this room has the ability to do that. And that's why I think that we should spend time in rooms like this where we actually get to share the resources and what we know and how we can connect all of these solutions to the problems that we have, because every person in this room has a problem that they're dealing with. How many people in here have problems that they have to deal with on a daily basis? All right, yeah. If you don't have a problem, you need to go home and you need to find one like really quickly, because that's a problem. There is somebody that's inside of this room that knows the solution to your problem. I remember Dr. Gallen earlier today, he said that a crisis is a testing time. I know back from being in school how tests used to be. We would all sit inside of a room, have a paper in front of us, and everybody had to do the test individually, and you had to get the answers, and you were freaking out if you did not know the answer to the question. Guess what? We're not in class anymore. We're out in the real world. We have the ability to actually get up and say, hey, do you know the answer to this question? And more than likely, there is a person in this room that has the answer to the question. So everybody, if you have a problem, start talking about it to other people in this classroom, this classroom right here, because somebody has the solution to your problem. So the digital divide is just us. The way that we get out of this digital divide is understanding that we are not alone in this problem. And in this test, the only way that we find the solutions is if we come together to solve each other's problems.
Thank you.
Going beyond, I guess, the education field, the digital divide absolutely affects the criminal justice field. We have departments, and specifically with gang activity, where they'll go to parents to inform them about their children's gang affiliation, and the parents will, vehemently deny, like, there is no way that my child is a part of a gang. And all that the department has to do is literally go on Instagram or Facebook and show verifiable photos. I mean, and we're talking about a public platform, Instagram, Facebook. And but for that physical, picture, they would have no idea. And when you talk about monitoring, I mean, I remember I'm 29, so I'm a part of the generation where, Facebook just started. And my father, to this day, I'm not getting on that mess,
Tell your father to call me.
But now you have to. You absolutely have to. And so not just in the classroom, but beyond the classroom, the we're calling it the digital divide, but it really is a parent-child divide. You have a responsibility to know where your children are interfacing. I mean, even when you think about human trafficking, Florida, we have the second most cases in the country. And if you don't think that our human trafficking cases, most of them come from online, then you're sadly mistaken. So you have a responsibility not just to know where your child is physically, in my opinion, but also to know where they are, on the internet. So, there is a digital divide, and it's important that we not just bridge the gap, because a bridge can fall, but fill the gap.
Well put. Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to just mention about the digital divide. I think among children who come from lower income backgrounds and children that come from homes where 2 or more languages are spoken, there may be a real digital divide there as far as education, because in some of the schools that I work in, a lot of things are online. Students have portals, they can get their books online, everything. And I have kids right now in some of my schools that their parents don't have the internet. They cannot afford to have the internet at home. So some of the parents are able to take their children to the library. But if you go to the library in Miami-Dade County, which I do, I love libraries, I think there's a max on the amount of time that you can use one of their computers on a daily basis. So, and that's if your parents can take you to the library. So we do have some children that will unfortunately fall behind academically if, because their parents at this time don't have the resources. And then the other divide, I think, among children are, I see a lot of, I work a lot with Black kids, and then, I have family, so I just see a lot of what happens. And so it's like watching the videos and playing the games and all the fun stuff. But when it comes down to using the internet for research or how to learn something, as you were saying, I don't necessarily always see that some of our youth see the internet as a resource to teach them things or to take them places. I want to know more about this country. I may not be able to travel there, but now I can go on the internet and I can learn about this culture. I can learn another language. There's so many things that they can do, but I don't think yet that many of our Black youth, especially if they're from lower income backgrounds or they come from homes where they speak more than one language, that they're always understanding how technology can be used in a way to access education or to change things in their lives. And I'm not saying that's for every child, but that's from a lower income background or multilingual background. But a lot of times I do see that, in practice.
Thank you. In the 1800s, during Reconstruction, there was a gentleman named Zach Hubert, a former slave, and his wife, and they were parents to 12 children. And Zach Hubert is quoted as saying to his 12 children, "Get your education. It's the one thing they can't take away from you." The Huberts went to the lengths of hiring a teacher to school their children on their farm. And when those children came of age, they did something that would have been unthinkable for Zach and for his peers. All 12 of them went to college. This was during the ascent of historically Black colleges and universities, and more than 105 to be exact, HBCUs continue to operate today. panelists and to visitors, please raise your hand if you or somebody that you love attended a historically black college or university. It's a lot of us. Thank you. Thank you. And if you're first generation college in your family, please raise your hand. Congratulations. And thank you on both counts. Panelists, HBCUs. Let's talk.
Yes. So I mentioned that I'm from Ferguson, and you wouldn't have known where that was but for, a couple years ago with Mike Brown. But if I describe to you my upbringing, you would think that I was describing something out of the 60s. St. Louis, in general, when I was growing up, is very black and white, and not much in between. Not that there aren't, different cultures, but it's very divided. At the school that I went to for high school, my sister and I, we were the smart black kids. And there were a group of us. We all hung out together. We were in the honors courses. And that's basically it. We were the smart black kids. And my high school counselor picked me and my sister, and she said, I want you all to go to Howard. I want you to go to Howard University because I think you need Howard. And I went to Howard University, founded in 1867 by the Freedmen's Bureau, a bureau designed because the country understood that all of these freedmen needed to be educated. They needed nurses and doctors, and certainly we wouldn't welcome them in our universities. And when I stepped on Howard's campus, the campus was full of the smart black kids from all over. It was Chicago, Jamaica. I mean, we had people from all over the world, and it just clicked. It was black intelligentsia from all walks of life, and we all understood the commonality of our struggle and the differences of our struggle. I am who I am because of Howard University. I know that if I didn't go there, I would not be the person that I am. From Delta Sigma Theta, I worked literally at every level of government and every branch by the time that I graduated from Howard University. I went to Howard University School of Law, Thurgood Marshall, first African Americans. I mean, I can go on and on, but yes, it is needed. And the confidence that you get, I think, is unparalleled, particularly from a background that I came from where we were 5 and you had an entire university. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, HBCUs. I was sitting here listening, and I was appreciating her passion about going through that moment of reflection, and I almost had a moment where I thought this was more therapy than a panel, at least for me, because we live our lives so rapidly that we never take the opportunity to reflect on our journey because we're so focused on the next destination. My entry into FAMU was critical, and I'm very, very grateful for them because they gave me an opportunity. And I tell this story quite often that I am where I am because of a however. I started out obviously at Northwestern, 9th grade. I shared that journey. I can go on, but it was not always a smooth road. 10th grade, I ran afoul. Great friend of mine, Zachary Griffin, who's no longer with us. He eventually got moved away to California when he had gotten in some trouble, and myself. And my grades weren't good 9th and 10th grade until a person like Mr. Walpole put me on the right path. So when I graduated from high school, I had a 2.5 grade point average. I didn't make 1,000 on the SAT, and I was not accepted to FAMU. So I received a letter of rejection. And I always tell people there's always a however in your life. A lot of times we start with the first paragraph, but continue to read because the story's not over. And at the bottom of that page was a however. And it basically spoke to the notion, if you're really serious about college, write a letter. We'll consider that. And you would have to be here during the summer, which I got admitted on a probationary status. And I could not fall below a 3-point grade point average. I majored in English, and I graduated in 3 years magna cum laude. I was very, very motivated because the other part of the story is that I came out of high school a teenage father. So I was motivated in terms of getting to a position to be able to take care of my child. And I never relented on courses, taking 18, 22 credits. But with respect to the environment of FAMU, I had a Dr. Hemingway, I had a Dr. Pratt. They had just opened up their FAMU Early Childhood Learning Center. It wasn't called Early Childhood Learning, back then, but that's what it's called. It's before it became real popular. And my daughter was enrolled there, and I had a village of fraternity brothers and sorority sisters, and everybody kind of came together, and people understood that level of support that was needed. And nothing was handed to me. Nothing was handed to me. And that was proven when I realized the preparation that I had. And I told you early on, it was not until FIU that I ever sat in a classroom with a person who wasn't black. So there is always that back of the mind, is the intellectual ice colder at white universities versus black universities? I say the answer is emphatically no. The intellectual ice is not colder because I graduated from FIU with a master's and a doctorate and a 4.0 in both. Published dissertation through a traditional pathway, not Saturdays, not Sundays, not online. We didn't have the internet when I got my doctorate. We had to go to the library and actually go through anybody remember that? Hands, okay, you go card catalog and you pull a file. And this was done while I was working as a teacher and raising, at the time then, 2 children as a single father. So I said all of that to say the foundation that the college gave me, they gave me that opportunity when others probably would not have.
Yes.
So that's the value of the HBCU, and it's tremendously important, and I'm an avid supporter of it.
Thank you, thank you. To quote the philosopher George Santayana, a child educated only in school is an uneducated child. And I think the wisdom and the information and the experience and the passion that all of our panelists have brought to you today really exemplify that. We do have some time for questions. I am prepared to actually stand here all day. I'm just loving this, and I'm so happy that you all are here. But we do have some time for questions. Annabelle?
Hello, everyone. Hello, panelists. Thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives with us. I'm holding the mic for anyone who wants to ask questions, but before they do, I want to take the opportunity to ask my own question, because we'll get to the end and then I would have never had the chance to. So my question, and I'll probably get different responses to it, but as someone who's working towards being an advocate for social justice, who's constantly working on improving my perspectives and understandings of not only my community, but the communities around me, I'm curious to know if there's one particular statement or belief that you've heard from someone else, from a colleague, from a friend, from a family member, that paints your family or your communities in a light that you feel is untrue. Something that you feel that needs to be challenged, a stereotype you think needs to be called into question by people who are working towards an allyship.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I'll tackle it. I feel like my time in Miami, this is like my second home. Like, my mom was here visiting, and she asked me if I ever gonna move back to Indiana. I said no. I love you, but no, you can always move here. I think I had my impressions of Miami when I first got down here was South Beach. That's all you see when you're. That's all. Every time I go home, everybody believe I live on South Beach. I'm partying with the stars and stuff like that. But I think a statement I have heard about our students is like, well, it's going to be a few. It's a few. You always have that anomaly or a student who out of the group who can go to a really Harvard and go to these schools and like, well, that's just them. And that rubs me the wrong way in so many ways because I see so much potential in a lot of the students we work with. I see so much potential in the communities. Like Miami is a community. Like I feel like people don't believe that. Like, oh, Miami is just like an isolated place. But when I used Liberty City. When I went to Liberty City, I felt like I was part of the community, and I felt that more there than I was at home. And that's something to say. I never felt like everybody went into Charles Drew. Everybody, like, I never seen that. So I think that statement of like that one golden egg or golden goose is going to make it, it's not true. It's like all these students have so much potential, and it just takes everything we've been saying, that solution-oriented mindset, resources, sports, fine arts, to really push them through it. And you can have a culture of, if I don't go to college, something's wrong. If I don't go to vocational school, something's wrong. If I don't go to the arms, something like, you can have that culture, but you have to really put that in their mindsets now, 3, 4, 5, 1 from birth. And that's something that the parents don't have to do. It's something that we would want them to do, yeah, but that's what we're here for. That's why we go to these conferences. That's why we have conversation. That's why I do what I do. So I think that little mentality of Miami students aren't aren't up to par. They are, and I will fight any day for that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, the statement that I think is very simple. I said it earlier, is that this notion that poor black parents from the urban core don't care about and want what's best for their children. That is a predisposition that people have. And I've not met a parent that doesn't want what's best for their children. It's about their ability to navigate through it. So that's one of the things that I think people who are not a part of the community that may come in with that predisposition would be a miscalculation.
Thank you.
What I can add is that the notion that black men are not involved in their children's lives, this is a real falsity. I don't have the stats in front of me, but there's so many black men that are involved with their children's lives and making their lives better. You know, from the parents, I see one guy, he comes to the center pretty much every day on a bicycle to pick his kids up. He's that involved. I don't have a car, but I'm still going to be involved in my kids' lives. I think that's a falsehood that need to be changed.
Thank you. Jiambe.
And I wanted to say, growing up as an African-American in the Northeast, and then I also lived out west and then in the South, but my father was a single father, so you're absolutely right. My father raised 3 girls when my mother decided she wanted to leave. But my comment would be, is that being in the mental health field, I worked in the drug rehabilitation. I've worked with children's mental health, and then now I'm in education. But I've always heard that many of the problems that are going on in the African-American community are because they live in single-parent homes, because the parents are never home, because they don't care about their children. I hear it, too, in the schools, which I find highly disrespectful because, as Dr. Gallen said, I have also never met a black parent that did not want the best for their children. Even within a drug rehabilitation center where the parents are there with their children, those mothers and fathers cared about what happened to their children. So I think it is a huge untruth that many of the ills that are going on in our society, which Dr. Gallen and many other people mentioned here today, they're not new. You can just go back and read the history, and there's a historical context to it, and there's a trauma piece that people need to understand it from. But we're not, these problems are not just because of what the research says of, single-parent homes and drug abuse and all the things that are consistent that I've seen in my undergraduate education, graduate school. Every time I, read research, I know plenty of children that, and I'm a product of one that, my parents were married. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Or kids from different backgrounds that and success, I don't just define success by how many degrees you have, because it's much bigger than that. I don't consider myself successful by any means because I'm sitting here or because I'm a professional. There's, I have a responsibility to my community. I have a responsibility to my family. Those things matter to me. Whatever I've been blessed with, what can I do with it so the next generation is better? It's much deeper than a paycheck or something that's sitting on my wall or some picture, or a degree. But that's the biggest untruth to me, is that the ills that we have as people, because mostly it's our fault. There are many different pieces that we have to look at, including looking at self, but from a historical context. And until people can understand that at that level, it's just very hard for me to see, hear that people don't think that, we don't care about our children and our communities and education, which is definitely not true.
Thank you. Before we go to our closing question, if you have a business card that you'd like to provide us with, please raise your hands. We'll come around. And I know someone's holding the mic, and we'll come to you for your card as well.
I think this should be closing question part A. If resources were unlimited in Miami-Dade County, what do you think would be the two most impactful changes that we could make, and would year-round schooling be beneficial?
Interesting.
I think year-round schooling would be very beneficial. I'm a firm believer in you get out what you put into it. So if I'm in school year-round, those students would be much smarter, I believe. I believe that we will learn more, and if our resources were unlimited, I believe they should bring back the home economic classes back into school, the business classes, the wood shop classes, workshop, because everybody's not going to be go to college. Everybody's not going to have that GPA, but in wood shop they learn how to work with wood. They learn how to build certain things. Before, when I was coming up, we learned how to put engines together. Those are things I think they need to bring back inside the school system for those who decide, well, I don't want to go to college, but in wood shop, I learned how to be a carpenter. And that's another avenue to be successful.
Thank you. And Dr. Gallen, will you bring us home, and then we're moving on to raffles?
Yes. I think if resources were unlimited, again, I go back to my opening comment that I think the most critical institution in terms of saving our nation starts with saving our cities, which starts with saving our communities, which starts with saving our homes. So I think an investment in the home first of all, foremost. So very often we talk about making investments in education, and we look at it from a formal standpoint with respect to the public institution of education versus educating parents to be demand parents and to give them the wherewithal to be able to navigate our bureaucracies, our systems, and give them a sense of hope and an ability to improve their lives. I often said throughout my administrative career, I'm not one to panic over budget shortfalls. And people say, oh, you don't panic over that. I say when financial resources get scarce, that's when intellectual resources must be ramped up. So we have to be able to think through a lot of these things. So parents and stakeholders in underperforming and underserved communities need more information about how to solve their own problems. And we need to invest in that, because through an investment is the only way you're going to be able to sustain it. So infinite resources may come at a certain point in time, but I don't believe there's ever a point in time where resources financially will be infinite. But with the investment of information and education, where a person can stand on their own 2 feet, that will last a lifetime. And I think all of us up here are living examples of that. And that's what's been really the panacea dealing with the crisis of black education over the course of our history.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gallen. Adoch would like to make a brief statement. Please, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Now, I am blessed to be here today. I'm panel. Thank you very much for your information. I know I'm known as the head wrap queen or the head wrap person over there.
But so much more.
I use my platform. I'm also a model. We're having Africa Fashion Week this week, but I'm also use my platform for the head wraps. I started with head wraps, and I had men and I had children ask me, what do we do? You only have head wraps for the grown folks. What can we do? So I decided to take my head wraps and wrap them into journals and writing books. And I did them in sets of 3 for 3 different reasons. It looks beautiful as a gift set, one for the house, the car, the home. But most importantly, what I wanted to do was use my platform to tell people, I don't have any children. You may not have any children, but hold a child accountable. Give one of these books to a child. Have them write 3 to 5 things that they're grateful for daily. They'll hold you accountable because a lot of the times they just want your attention. And this is something that we have to get back to a community. Yes, education is great and all of that is great, but these kids are, and I heard one of the panelists say, you know, if you sit with them and do their homework, it means a lot as opposed to just leaving them there. So if we can use whatever space that we have to just have them write 3 to 5 things daily, change their mindset, and we can slowly change the world one page at a time. So I'm definitely grateful for everything, the confirmations that you've given me. And I hope that you guys can just find a youth, let them be a mentor, take the time, maybe if it's a day, maybe it's a week, just have them read back to you what they're thankful for, and we can heal the world and hopefully change it.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much. So let's begin with, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about the head wrap. And we're going to draw a card. Oh, even better.
I don't want to be responsible for anything.
We have a couple of people
I'm originally born in East Africa. I was born in Uganda. I've been blessed enough to travel the world. I've lived in Toronto. I've lived in Brussels. Head wrapping is a part of my lifestyle, not only because it's a crown, but truth be told, sometimes I just don't want to do my hair.
That's fair.
But it's a protective style for us women of colors that know that you can walk around with conditioner underneath here, which sometimes I do. But it's not only just a head wrap; it's a scarf. It's a fabric from the motherland. Like a lot of my fabrics are from Ghana, Nigeria, or Mali. So it's a piece of home. And once you own that, even if you put it on your table or your chair as something that's there, to me, it grounds me. It just reminds me the colors. It just makes me smile. It makes me happy. So that's why I started with the head wraps, because I'm known as the head wrap queen, because that's what I was doing. I'm like, why not just do it? And I've expanded to the books, which I feel is important because the youth are important to me, and healing the world and being a blessing and using my platform means the world to me. So without further ado, I am donating a head wrap, or we're raffling now.
Yes, we're going gifting it.
And Trudy Brown.
All right, Trudy. Come on down. That's great.
If you have any further questions or want to know how to do them, please feel free to come to the back and I'll answer any questions. I also have a book back there that I would love you to write some words of love and words of power for me so that you can heal me as well. Thank you.
Yes, sir. The liberty to have her to bring 2 or 4 of my books that you can raffle off if you want to.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Let's do it right now, Dr. Gallen.
Yes, when we got into the discussion about the crisis in black education, and as I said, it was somewhat of a therapeutic session for me. I asked my aide to go down to the car because I ironically had several books that some educators had requested, not a commercial. I donate them when I give them. But I've written several books, and 2 of my prized possessions, I have 2 more that I have to complete, really provide a chronology, real-life chronology. It's not for the faint of heart, on urban education, poverty, racism, and violence. It is a real tale about what has transpired over the course of nearly 2 decades. The first one is entitled Educating with Love and Without Compromise. Those who have followed my career, this is the story of Holmes Elementary School when I became a principal at the age of 26 years old. That was during the time when the violence was rampant, John Doe and the killings, but it really is a backdrop to what challenges I faced walking into a school that was underperforming, and some of the things that we did in collaboration with partners such as HUD and Liberty Square to get parents accountable, to starting programs at the school site. Back then we had 1,180 kids. We had a program that was called Florida First Start at the school, and we had Florida First Start through 6th grade. And this is a real narrative, and it has some reflections on my life growing up in Liberty City. The next book is When Morning Comes, Moments of Struggle, Strength, and Salvation. You literally turn the page of the first book, and you open the last page of the first book goes to the first page of the second book, which is my entry into Miami Northwestern Senior High School. I talk about accountability, again, the violence from children who were murdered to former students who committed suicide. But I also tell the story of triumph in terms of how education serves as a pathway in the urban core. So what you heard in terms of my cynicism to a certain extent about the crisis, the first book I wrote 16 years ago. Wow. And the second one was written 11 years ago. So I thought that I would offer these.
Do you want them to go in sets? Or
yes,
four?
I'm sorry, they're sets. You
okay.
Yes, they're
so
sets.
Let's draw 2 names.
So I'll give
Thank you
these
so much.
to you.
Very generous.
And
thank you. Thank you.
The first one goes to Tranelle Harris.
Okay.
And the second set goes to Samantha Mirabon.
Cooking for Life.
Cooking for Life? No?
Okay, I guess we'll be holding it for her. We'll see that we work closely with them. We'll see that it gets to her. Terrific. We also have 2 journals in which you can create the story of your life with prompts. So let's do 2 more drawings.
Carla from
Opelika.
She was there.
Will you see her, Jermaine, or no? Okay. All right. And a second one.
Terry Rutherford.
Miss Terry. And one final. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. This book happens to be one of my personal favorites. It's called Harlem Speaks, and there is a DVD inside. I think everyone should have this on their bookshelf.
And it's for Eugenia Russell.
From FIU?
From FIU.
Great. Yes, sir.
Is there going to be some kind of an announcement or comment about the way forward and how does this conglomeration of expertise and intelligence, how does it stay together and do something? What's going to happen?
That's a very provocative question, and thank you so much. The Early Learning Coalition hosts monthly cafes about topical issues. We usually are aligning with a national conversation. Dr. Sinkfield mentioned human trafficking last month. This time we had 80 folks in this room, and we were talking about human trafficking, and there was also a call to action. What we hope will happen is that you will choose personally what point in the system you want to, what your on-ramp to change would be. We encourage advocacy. This is part of our contribution to the community. We work closely with most of the partners. We sit on boards together. We work closely together. We certainly feel as if we're in a community conversation together. I'm not sure that that answers your question directly. I would punt to the panelists if anyone else would like to weigh in as well. And it's a very good question. But
Well, I want to thank the Early Learning Coalition for inviting me to come and be a part of this, for inviting all of us to come and be a part of this. For me, I guess the key point in turning things, and the most important point to me is diversity. Mm-hmm. I teach my students on a university level that the system was inherently created for participation of all. Although when it was created, we weren't considered the all. But albeit that's how it was created, we have to highlight how we can be involved and encourage it. And I think by simply having us highlighting our different areas of expertise and showing people what it is that we do, I'm actually about to lead to a Silly and Expunge Fair, where the people who my office have given a criminal record, we're now giving them a second chance, erasing that criminal record and saying, I want you to have a job and be gainfully employed so you don't have to do this again. So to answer that question, I have cards,
yes.
and I'm available, and I'm sure the rest of our panel is as well.
Thank you. Well put. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We are a little bit over time. I think it was well worth it. I have been educated, informed, and inspired. I hope that you have as well. To piggyback on the statement of the gentleman, the question, the way forward, I hope that each of you will personally decide what your way forward is and which way you want to contribute to supporting the life of a child. I think there have been lots of great suggestions from our panels today, and we look forward to seeing you next month, April 20th, as we discuss Trailblazing Women. Thank you. It's March 16th. Yes, I apologize. Thank you.